Amidst luxury and indifference, a simple request for food and a child's gaze changed the course of a life frozen by grief. And what happens next, no one could have predicted. The nights in New York City always had a kind of artificial brilliance. Lights from mirrored skyscrapers, golden facades of luxury restaurants, and cars that seemed never to rest. But on that night, there was a different silence hovering over the Upper East Side. The kind of silence that only appears when something important is about to happen, even if no one notices it immediately. Inside the Summit, one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city, Michael Davidson, 47, a billionaire from the tech sector, sat alone at his corner table. The candlelight cast soft reflections on the silver cutlery, and the waiter knew him well enough not to attempt conversation. There was no need to ask if he wanted wine. He never drank. Not anymore. He always used the same gestures. His eyes swept the room without real interest. His fork was raised and lowered in the same rhythm. His perfectly aligned suit jacket never left his body. It was as if everything there, including him, was on autopilot. The dishes arrived perfectly arranged, but were almost never touched. That night the medallion with truffled puree rested untouched before him, like a work of art that no one dares to disturb. It had been 10 years since he lost his wife Emily and son Ethan in a tragic accident on the interstate. 10 years since the siren of an ambulance made him crumble from the inside out. Since then, his companies had prospered, his investments tripled, but Michael no longer lived. He merely survived. And it was at that corner table, always reserved even without necessity, that he allowed himself to remember for a few minutes everything he avoided during the day. Jennifer, his executive assistant for 15 years, was perhaps the only person who understood the extent of his emptiness. She watched him wither each year, hidden behind spreadsheets, acquisitions, and endless meetings. No matter how hard she tried, she never managed to get him to accept an invitation to any event that wasn't strictly professional. "Mr. Davidson, your coffee," announced the waiter, placing the cup in front of him. A strong espresso, no sugar, another ritual fulfilled. Michael nodded without looking at the man. His gaze was fixed on the window, where the light rain was beginning to fog the glass. The drops ran down, forming random patterns that sometimes merged, like tears that meet on the face of someone crying. But that night something broke the cycle. Before he could bring the cup to his lips, he felt a presence approaching. It wasn't the waiter, nor an acquaintance, nor even someone who looked like they belonged there. It was a young woman, poorly dressed, black hair tied with a loose elastic, carrying in her arms a boy less than a year old, wrapped in a blanket too thin for the September wind. She had brown eyes, tired, but still intense. "Can I eat the leftovers?" The question was asked in a low voice, almost an embarrassed whisper. The maitre d' was already approaching with quick, firm steps, ready to expel the intruder from that refined environment. But it wasn't her voice that struck Michael. It was the boy's gaze. Noah, as he would later learn, didn't say anything, didn't cry, didn't plead. He just looked. With large, curious, and slightly bright eyes, he observed that plate like someone contemplating a campfire on a cold night. "It's all right." Michael raised his hand, stopping the maitre d'. "She can stay." A murmur of disapproval ran through the nearby tables. People who paid fortunes for that exclusivity didn't expect to share the space with someone like her. Michael instinctively pushed the plate toward the young woman. "You can take it," he said, with a voice he hadn't used in a long time. A voice that wasn't the businessman's, but that of a man who once knew what compassion was. She didn't grab it like someone desperate, but wrapped it in a clean, faded cloth, like someone storing something sacred. With the baby still in her arms, she sat on the floor next to the table, took out a plastic spoon and began to feed the boy with small gestures of care that Michael hadn't seen since the days when Emily used to sing to Ethan before bedtime. "What's his name?" asked Michael, surprising himself with the interest. "Noah," she replied without raising her eyes. "He turned 10 months last week." No one in the restaurant moved. No word was spoken, but everyone watched, some with discomfort, others with contempt. Michael, however, couldn't take his eyes off the boy. With each spoonful the child smiled, emitting a soft sound of pleasure, as if that puree by itself was enough to bring warmth to the world. "And you, what's your name?" continued Michael, while making a discreet signal for the waiter to bring more food. Sarah Miller. She finally raised her gaze, suspicious of the sudden kindness. She was used to being shooed away, not treated like a person. The waiter returned with a plate of ravioli in mushroom sauce and a glass of orange juice. He placed them on the table without completely hiding his discomfort. "Please, sit at the table." Michael indicated the chair in front of him. Sarah hesitated. No one had invited her to sit anywhere for so long that the gesture seemed like a trap. "I won't harm you," Michael assured, noticing her hesitation. "I'd just like you and your son to eat properly." With cautious movements, Sarah settled into the chair, adjusting Noah in her lap. The baby, feeling the comfort of the cushioned seat, smiled more openly. "Where do you come from?" asked Michael, trying not to sound invasive. "From everywhere and nowhere," she replied, blowing on a spoonful of ravioli before offering it to Noah. "We've been in New York for 6 months. Before that, we lived in White Plains, but—" She stopped, as if some stories were too heavy to share with strangers. Michael didn't insist. He knew well the weight of unfinished stories. She finished feeding Noah, and then, only then, ate a few bites for herself, always looking around as if at any moment she might be thrown out. "Thank you," she said finally, standing up. "We need to go." "Wait." Michael pulled out his wallet. Sarah backed away, her face hardening. "I'm not asking for money, just food." Michael stopped, feeling the weight of those words. Her pride, even in the worst of situations, impressed him. "It's raining," he said, putting away his wallet. "Can I at least call a taxi for you?" "We have a place to stay," she replied, adjusting the blanket around Noah. "But thank you again for the food." She thanked him with an almost imperceptible nod and left. Michael stayed, but that scene didn't leave him. At the exit of the restaurant, he stopped under the marquee, observing the rain that was now falling harder. He saw Sarah crossing the street, protecting Noah with her own body, not caring about getting wet herself. Something in that image touched him deeply. It was devotion in its purest state. It was love without conditions or expectations. He got into his bulletproof Mercedes and asked the driver to take him home. On the way, his eyes caught details of the city that he normally ignored. People sleeping under bridges, entire families sheltered in makeshift tents, the stark inequality that New York tried to hide behind its imposing skyscrapers. For the first time in years, Michael Davidson felt something beyond the apathy that consumed him, a discomfort, a restlessness, a spark of something he couldn't name, or perhaps didn't want to. Upon arriving at his triplex penthouse in Tribeca, he dismissed the driver and remained alone in the half-light of the living room. The silence of the apartment, once so familiar, now seemed deafening. That encounter had awakened something that had been dormant for an entire decade, and Michael knew that, from that night on, nothing would be the same. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give a like. Tell us from which city you're watching us. We continue. In the days that followed, Michael tried to return to his routine, meetings, reports, investments, but something was different. His office at Davidson Tech, which occupied the entire floor of one of the most imposing buildings in the financial district, seemed smaller, suffocating. The bulletproof glass windows, which once gave him a sense of security, now seemed to imprison him. "Are you all right, sir?" asked Jennifer, noticing that Michael was observing the city below with a different look. "I am," he replied automatically, without taking his eyes from the window. "That family down there, can you see them, near that food truck?" Jennifer approached, adjusting her glasses. "Yes, what about them?" "They're smiling, all of them." Michael frowned, as if trying to decipher a complex enigma. How can someone smile like that in the midst of chaos? Jennifer observed him carefully. In 15 years, she had never seen him make this kind of observation. Something had changed. "The meeting with the Chinese investors is scheduled for 3 o'clock, she commented, trying to bring him back to corporate reality. "They're eager to learn about the new facial recognition technology." Michael merely nodded, returning to his desk. On it, 3 monitors displayed graphs, quotes, and numbers that, until a few days ago, were his entire life. Now, they seemed empty of meaning. When the clock struck noon, he grabbed his jacket and left without notice, leaving Jennifer confused. It wasn't like him to leave without planning, without a driver, without a destination. Michael drove his own car, a behavior he hadn't adopted in years. When he stopped at the traffic light on Madison Avenue, he noticed faces he had previously ignored. The woman selling candy at the traffic light, the young man cleaning windshields, the elderly man carrying a sign asking for help to buy medicine. All of them, invisible until then, now had form, contour, history. Without realizing it, his steps led him to Queens, not to the upscale neighborhood, but to its fringes, where mansions gave way to improvised communities. He parked the car and walked, ignoring the surprised looks of residents seeing a man in an Italian suit walking through those alleys. That's when he spotted an old dark blue Chevrolet parked behind an abandoned church. The rear window was broken, replaced by a piece of plastic and duct tape. In the back seat, hanging on an improvised hanger, was a small, colorful shirt, a baby's shirt. His heart quickened. That's where she slept with her son. He didn't approach. He just observed from a distance, hidden behind a wall covered with graffiti. Hours later, he saw Sarah approaching, carrying grocery bags and Noah in her arms. The boy seemed paler than on the night at the restaurant. Sarah opened the car with difficulty, placed the baby in the back seat, and began to organize what appeared to be dinner: bread, a piece of bologna, a banana that was too ripe. Michael felt something tighten in his chest, a nearly forgotten feeling. Was it guilt, compassion, or simply humanity re-emerging from a long sleep? The next day, he left the office early again. This time he stopped at a supermarket and bought diapers, infant formula, baby food, and a container of hot soup from the restaurant near his building. He left the bag near the car, where Sarah would certainly find it, but didn't stay to see. He didn't want to be recognized, didn't want gratitude. This ritual was repeated for weeks. Each day, Michael left something different: a blanket for the cold that was intensifying, clean clothes for Noah, cold medicine, educational toys, and always hot and nutritious food. Each time he felt that knot in his chest loosen a little. Each time he returned home feeling less empty. Jennifer began to notice the changes in her boss's behavior. The irregular hours, the sudden departures, the less burdened countenance. She came to think he might be involved with someone, a new romance perhaps. But she knew Michael too well to know it wasn't that. "I need you to find an address for me," he asked one morning, handing her a paper with a car license plate number. "Total discretion, Jennifer." She nodded, intrigued. In a few hours she had the information. The blue Chevrolet was registered to Jason Miller with an address in White Plains. A quick additional search revealed that Jason had been the victim of a serious work accident at a construction site about a year ago. The news didn't mention his current condition. "Must be her husband," muttered Michael to himself upon receiving the information, pieces of the puzzle fitting together in his mind. That night, he left more than food and supplies. He left an envelope with enough money for 3 months' rent in a decent place and a handwritten letter unsigned. "To Sarah and Noah, this isn't charity. It's just a push to start over. You deserve more than a car as shelter. The money is for rent, enough for you to get established while you find a job. You don't need to know who I am. Just know that I'm rooting for you, strength." But the next morning, when he passed by the location, the car was still there. The envelope, however, had disappeared. In the days that followed, he continued his ritual, but now with more anxiety. He expected to see the car leave, meaning that Sarah had accepted his help and found a better place. But the Chevrolet remained, day after day. One night, he risked getting closer. The car was empty. Worried, he waited for hours, until he finally saw Sarah approaching, carrying Noah. The boy was coughing violently. "He's been like this for days," she murmured to herself as she tried to accommodate her son in the back seat. "It will pass, my love, it will pass." Michael felt an impulse to reveal himself, to offer direct help, but restrained himself. Something told him that Sarah would refuse. Her pride was too great. He needed to find another way. That's when he noticed a paper falling from her pocket as she accommodated Noah. A small white card with a phone number. When she got into the car, Michael silently approached and picked up the card. "Support line, Davidson Tech. In case of emergency, call." It was the number of his company's anonymous complaint line, distributed on all products to report failures or suggestions. How had that reached Sarah's hands? It probably came in one of the food bags he had left. 2 nights later, when the rain was punishing New York, his cell phone rang at 3 in the morning. It was Jennifer. "Mr. Davidson, sorry to wake you, but we received a message on the support line. Normally I wouldn't bother you about this, but the person specifically mentions your name." "What does the message say?" Michael was already up, hastily getting dressed. Just 2 words, "Help us," and then, "Tell the man from the restaurant I thought it was strange and—" Michael didn't wait for the end of the sentence. "Trace the location of that call, Jennifer, now." In 20 minutes, he was driving like he hadn't in years, cutting through the city in the rainy dawn. The Chevrolet was still in the same place, but now with the interior lights on. Through the plastic that replaced the glass, he could see the desperation in Sarah's eyes. He parked abruptly and ran to the car. When Sarah saw him, her eyes widened in recognition. "It's you," she said, tears mixing with rain on her face. "It was you all along." Noah was lying in the back seat, his small body shaking uncontrollably, his skin red with fever. Michael didn't hesitate. He took off his jacket, wrapped the child in it, and took him in his arms. "We're going to the hospital," he said, with a firmness he hadn't felt in years. "Now." Sarah didn't protest. She got into Michael's car and held Noah in her lap while he drove. The silence between them was dense, full of unformulated questions, but at that moment, only Noah's life mattered. "Why are you doing this?" Sarah finally asked, her voice trembling. "Why do you care about us?" Michael kept his eyes on the road, his hands gripping the wheel. How could he explain that in that small, feverish being in her arms, he had found a reflection of the son he had lost? How could he say that, seeing her fighting alone, he had found a purpose he thought he would never have again? "Because you gave me back something I had lost," he answered simply, as he parked at the emergency entrance of Mount Sinai Hospital, the most prestigious in New York. "And now it's my turn to help." At the hospital, the receptionist looked suspiciously at the unusual pair, a man in a soaked dress shirt carrying a feverish baby, accompanied by a young woman with worn clothes and disheveled hair. "I need your health insurance information and the child's documents," said the attendant, barely raising her eyes from the computer. "We don't have insurance," replied Sarah, her voice low with shame. The woman sighed impatiently. "Then you'll need to go to a public hospital. This is a private hospital." Michael, until then silent, stepped forward. His eyes, normally distant, now burned with an intensity that made the receptionist lean back in her chair. "My name is Michael Davidson," he announced, his voice calm but loaded with authority. "If a child becomes more ill due to neglect, I will buy this entire hospital and fire everyone, from the janitor to the director." The silence that followed was broken only by Noah's weak crying. The attendant paled, finally recognizing the man in front of her, one of the country's greatest businessmen, whose face appeared regularly on the covers of business magazines. "Oh, of course, Mr. Davidson. I'll call a doctor immediately." It took only seconds for Noah to be rushed to care. Michael and Sarah followed the nurse down the white antiseptic corridor to an examination room where a pediatrician was already waiting for them. "Pneumonia," the doctor diagnosed after carefully examining Noah. "We'll need to admit him for intravenous antibiotics and monitoring." Sarah instinctively squeezed Michael's hand, a gesture that surprised them both. "Will he be okay?" she asked, her voice choked. "We caught it in time," assured the doctor, "but it was close, a few more days without treatment." She didn't complete the sentence, but the meaning hung heavy in the air. Michael felt his stomach turn. If he hadn't received that message, if he had ignored it. "I'll prepare the admission," said the doctor, leaving the room. They were left alone, Sarah sitting on the gurney, holding Noah, who was asleep from the medication, Michael standing, still wet from the rain. The silence between them weighed tons. "Why didn't you use the money I left?" Michael finally asked, his voice more hurt than accusatory. "You could have rented a place, taken him to the doctor sooner." Sarah raised her eyes, red from tiredness and tears. "How could I know there wouldn't be a price later? No one gives anything for free in this world." The answer hit him like a blow. How much distrust must have been built for a gesture of help to be interpreted as a threat. "I don't want anything in return," he assured. "I just wanted to help." "Why?" she insisted. "There are thousands of people needing help in New York. Why us?" Michael looked away to the window, where the rain still punished the city. how to explain something that even he didn't fully understand. "When I saw Noah that night at the restaurant," he began, the words coming with difficulty, "something changed. It was as if I started to feel again after a long time." Sarah studied him for a long moment. "You lost someone, didn't you?" Michael nodded, unable to elaborate. 10 years later, the pain was still too fresh to be put into words. "Me too," she confessed, adjusting Noah in her arms. "My husband, Jason. Construction accident. He was a construction worker." "I know," admitted Michael. "I researched about you." Her eyes widened in alarm. "Not like that," he quickly clarified. "I just wanted to understand your situation to help better. I didn't have intention—" "You're Michael Davidson," she interrupted, as if that explained everything. "Owner of Davidson Tech, Connect Stores, the Easy Pay app. You don't help people like us without a reason." The distrust in her voice was palpable, and Michael couldn't blame her. The social abyss between them was too real to be ignored. Before he could respond, the door opened and the nurse entered to take Noah to his room. Sarah followed her, leaving Michael alone with his thoughts. In the corridor, he noticed a man discreetly taking pictures with his cell phone. He didn't give it importance. He was used to being recognized. He just didn't imagine the consequences that simple photo would bring. The next morning, while Sarah slept in the armchair next to Noah's bed, Michael received a call from Jennifer. "Sir, you need to see this." Her voice sounded concerned. "What happened?" "It's on all the news sites. Technology billionaire found in hospital with young mother and mysterious child. There are photos of you carrying the baby, entering Mount Sinai." Michael closed his eyes, massaging his temples. He knew the media cycle well. One day you're a hero, the next a villain. He didn't care what they said about him, but Sarah and Noah didn't deserve this kind of exposure. "What's the tone of the articles?" he asked, fearing the answer. "Mixed. Some are speculating about a love affair. Others suggest that the boy could be your son. The comments on social media are, well, you know how cruel people can be." Michael looked at Sarah, still asleep, oblivious to the storm that was forming. She already had enough problems. "Prepare an official statement," he instructed. "Just say that I'm helping a family in difficulty, no details, and check with the legal department how we can prevent the publication of images of the boy." He hung up and approached the window. Down below, he could already see some photographers mounting guard at the hospital entrance. The news would spread like wildfire. In a matter of hours, everyone would know about Sarah and Noah. "What is it?" Her voice startled him. Sarah was awake, observing him with attentive eyes. Michael hesitated. How to explain that because of him, her privacy had been destroyed? "We have a problem," he finally admitted. "Someone photographed us yesterday. It's in the news." Sarah paled. "Are they talking about me? About Noah?" "Speculating," he confirmed. "I'm sorry. This happens when you're a public figure." She stood up, her fists clenched. "You don't understand, do you? I can't have my photo in the newspapers. I can't have my name exposed like this." The intensity of her reaction surprised Michael. There was more there than simple concern about privacy. "Sarah, what's going on?" he asked, approaching cautiously. "Is there something I don't know?" She looked at Noah, still sleeping, and then at the door as if calculating the possibility of escape. Finally, her shoulders fell in defeat. "I'm running away," she confessed in a low voice. "Jason's family. They want to take Noah from me." Michael frowned, confused. "Why?" "Because they think I'm not fit to raise him," she replied, tears beginning to fall. "And maybe they're right. Look at us, living in a car, no money for food or a doctor." "But you're his mother." "They're rich," she continued, ignoring the interruption. "They have influence in White Plains. Jason's father owns a construction company. When Jason—" She hesitated, searching for words. "When he was gone, they offered me money to hand over Noah and disappear, as if he were merchandise, as if my son—" Her voice failed. Michael felt a wave of anger growing inside him. He knew this type of manipulation well. Rich people using their power to get what they wanted, without considering others' feelings. "That's why you didn't accept my help," he concluded. "You thought I also wanted something in return." She nodded, embarrassed. "The money you offered, and it was a lot. I thought maybe you were a contact of theirs, someone sent to find me. And now, with these photos in the newspapers, they'll find me. she completed, the panic evident in her voice. "They'll know exactly where we are." Michael felt the weight of responsibility fall on his shoulders. Inadvertently, he had exposed Sarah and Noah exactly to the people they were running from. "I won't let them take him," he guaranteed, surprising himself with the firmness of his own voice. "I have resources, Sarah. I can help you legally." She stared at him, distrust still present, but now mixed with a faint glimmer of hope. "Why? Why do you care so much?" Michael looked at Noah, at the small chest that rose and fell in peaceful sleep, at the tiny hands that grasped the sheet, and then, for the first time in 10 years, he allowed himself to say aloud what he had kept in the depths of his soul. "Because I lost my son and my wife in an accident. Because I know what it's like to have everything ripped away from you in an instant. And I can't—" His voice failed. "I can't stand by watching it happen to someone else." The confession hung in the air between them, raw and honest. Sarah slowly approached and, in a gesture that surprised them both, gently touched Michael's arm. "I'm sorry for your loss," she said, with a sincerity that completely disarmed him. In that moment, something invisible changed between them. It wasn't just a billionaire helping a mother in difficulty. They were two broken people recognizing each other's pain. The moment was interrupted when the door opened and a doctor entered to examine Noah. The news was good. The antibiotic was working, the fever had subsided, and his breathing was more regular. "He can be discharged in 2 days if he continues improving at this rate," informed the doctor. When they were alone again, Michael made a decision. "I have an empty apartment in Brooklyn," he said. "It's a safe place with 24-hour security. You can stay there until we resolve this situation with Jason's family." Sarah opened her mouth to refuse, but Michael gently interrupted her. "It's not charity, Sarah. It's the right thing to do. Please, let me help you." She looked at Noah, then at the window where photographers with telephoto lenses could already be seen, trying to capture images of the room. The situation had completely escaped her control. "All right," she finally agreed, "but with one condition." "Which one?" "When Noah is better, I want to work. I don't know how to do much, but I learn quickly. I don't want to live off favors forever." Michael smiled, feeling genuine respect for this woman who, even in the worst circumstances, maintained her dignity intact. "I'm sure we can find something," he assured. "Now rest a little. We have difficult days ahead." As Sarah fell asleep again in the armchair next to her son, Michael sent a message to Jennifer. "Prepare the Brooklyn apartment. We'll have guests." Outside the hospital, the number of reporters increased. Speculations multiplied, and in White Plains, Jason Miller's family watched the news with growing interest. The exit from the hospital was planned with military precision. While dozens of reporters mounted guard at the main entrance, Michael, Sarah, and Noah left Mount Sinai through a service exit, inside a van with tinted windows. Jennifer, always efficient, had coordinated every detail to ensure that no one followed them to the Brooklyn apartment. "It's temporary," explained Michael as they rode up in the private elevator. "Until we resolve the situation." Sarah just nodded, carrying Noah in her arms. The boy was completely recovered, smiling and babbling as if the days of high fever had never existed. The resilience of children was something she still found astonishing. When the apartment door opened, Sarah froze. The empty apartment that Michael had mentioned was, in fact, a duplex penthouse with a panoramic view of Prospect Park. Elegant furniture, artwork on the walls, a kitchen that looked like it came out of a design magazine. "This is an apartment?" she asked, unable to hide her amazement. Michael smiled timidly. "It was an investment. I never really lived here." Jennifer, who accompanied them, quickly showed them the accommodations. On the second floor, there was a room specially prepared for Noah, with a crib, baby monitor, diapers, clothes, and toys. "How did you manage all this so quickly?" asked Sarah, touching a colorful mobile above the crib in wonder. "Efficiency is Jennifer's middle name," replied Michael, exchanging a grateful look with his assistant. "I also provided some clothes for you," explained Jennifer, indicating the closet in the master bedroom. "I hope I got the sizes right." Sarah opened the closet doors and found various simple but good quality pieces. Nothing extravagant or flashy, just practical and comfortable clothes. The care with which they had been selected moved her. "Thank you," she said, her voice choked. "You thought of everything." "The refrigerator is stocked," continued Jennifer, professional as always, "and I left a list of important contacts on the kitchen table. My number is first on the list for any emergency." After showing how the appliances and security system worked, Jennifer discreetly said goodbye, leaving Michael and Sarah alone with Noah. An uncomfortable silence settled in. It was the first time they were really alone, without the urgency of Noah's illness or the presence of doctors and nurses. "I'll let you get settled," Michael finally said, moving toward the door. "If you need anything, just call." "You're not staying?" asked Sarah, surprising herself with the question. Michael stopped, his hand already on the doorknob. "I thought you'd prefer privacy." "Yes, but—" She hesitated, searching for the right words. "This is your apartment. I don't want to kick you out. I have my own place," he assured her. "Don't worry." Sarah nodded, suppressing the strange feeling of disappointment. Part of her wanted him to stay, not out of fear or insecurity, but because his presence had become strangely comforting. "Tomorrow I'll stop by to see how we should proceed with the legal issue," said Michael. "I'll schedule a meeting with the best family lawyer I know." "How much will all this cost?" asked Sarah, the concern evident in her voice. Michael smiled gently. "Don't worry about that now. Rest. Take care of Noah. We'll sort out the rest later." After he left, Sarah slowly walked through the apartment, Noah in her arms, still unable to believe the turnaround her life had taken in just a few days. From the precariousness of an old car to a luxury penthouse, from anonymity to newspaper headlines, from despair to hope. She put Noah to sleep in the new crib, observing how he instantly adjusted to the comfort of the soft mattress. Children adapted easily. It was adults who had difficulty accepting changes. In the master bedroom, she tried the shower with abundant hot water, a luxury she hadn't enjoyed for months. She put on new, fragrant pajamas and lay down on the king-size bed, sinking into the soft pillows. But she couldn't sleep. She thought about Michael, the mystery he represented. A powerful man respected and feared in the corporate world, who cared so much about a homeless single mother and her sick son. Why? The loss of his family explained it in part. But there was something more there, something she still couldn't decipher. The next morning she woke to the sound of the doorbell. On the intercom she saw Michael's face. "I brought breakfast," he announced when she opened the door. In his hands, a bag with bread, fruit and juices. Sarah smiled, noticing that he was dressed more casually, jeans and a polo shirt, instead of his usual suit. He looked younger this way, less intimidating. "Noah is still sleeping," she informed him, leading him to the kitchen. As they organized breakfast on the table, Michael observed her discreetly, with washed hair, new clothes, and without the dark circles of worry. Sarah revealed a simple and natural beauty that had previously been obscured by fatigue and dirt. "Did you sleep well?" he asked, serving orange juice. "Better than I have in a long time," she admitted. "I almost forgot what a real bed felt like." The simplicity with which she valued things that for him were absolutely basic moved him. "The lawyer will meet us here at 10, Michael informed her. "Her name is Rachel Bennett. She's the best in family law and is already familiar with your case." Sarah nodded, the anxiety returning. "Do you think I have a chance? Against a rich and influential family?" "You're the mother," he responded firmly. "And you're a good mother, Sarah. Anyone can see that by the way you care for Noah, even in the worst circumstances. That weighs heavily with any judge." Before they could continue the conversation, they heard Noah's cry through the baby monitor. Sarah immediately stood up, but Michael stopped her with a gentle gesture. "May I?" he asked, hesitantly. "Get him, I mean." The question surprised her, but she nodded. Michael went up the stairs, and through the monitor, she could hear him speaking softly to Noah. Minutes later, he came down with the boy in his arms, holding him with a mixture of care and fear, as if carrying something precious and fragile. "I think he approved of the new crib," commented Michael, sitting down with Noah on his lap. The boy looked at him with curiosity, his large brown eyes fixed on his face. Sarah prepared Noah's baby food, observing the interaction between the two. There was a sweetness in the way Michael looked at her son, something almost paternal that both moved and frightened her at the same time. The lawyer arrived punctually at 10. Rachel Bennett was a middle-aged woman with short grey hair and a penetrating gaze. She dressed with discreet elegance and spoke with the confidence of someone who deeply knows her craft. "Let's get straight to the point," she said after the introductions. The situation is complex, but not impossible. The paternal grandparents have resources, but you are the biological mother with full rights. They can claim that you don't have the financial means to raise the child, but that's easily addressed. How? Asked Sarah, apprehensively. With a stable job and adequate housing, replied Rachel pragmatically. Michael has already informed me that he will provide both. Sarah shot a surprised look at Michael, who just nodded discreetly. We have a position as coordinator of social responsibility at Davidson Tech, he explained. Someone to help direct resources to social projects that really make a difference. I think your personal experience would be valuable in that position. Sarah blinked, incredulous. But I don't have education, corporate experience, nothing like that. You have something more valuable, interrupted Michael. First-hand knowledge of what really makes a difference in the lives of those in need. The rest you can learn. Rachel cleared her throat, bringing them back to the legal issue. Additionally, we need to prove that you never abandoned your son, but were only seeking better conditions. The anonymous donations that Michael made will be useful to demonstrate that you had community support. And what about the news? The photos at the hospital? Asked Sarah. Won't they use that against me? They'll probably try, admitted Rachel, but we can turn the tables, show that even in extreme difficulties, you sought medical care for your son, demonstrating commitment to his well-being. The meeting continued for another hour, with Rachel detailing strategies and asking for information about Jason's family. When the lawyer finally said goodbye, Sarah felt simultaneously hopeful and exhausted. Do you really think I have a chance? She asked Michael when they were alone again. I'm certain, he responded with conviction. No one who sees how you care for Noah can doubt that his place is with you. Sarah felt tears welling up. How long had it been since she'd heard words of support and confidence? Since Jason's departure, she had faced everything alone, criticized by some, ignored by others, judged by all. Thank you, she whispered, quickly wiping her eyes. For everything. Michael smiled, a genuine smile that lit up his eyes in a way that Jennifer hadn't seen in years. Don't thank me yet. We have a lot of work ahead. In the days that followed, Sarah settled into the new apartment and the new routine. Michael appeared daily, always bringing something new. A toy for Noah, a book for her, news about the process. Gradually, the initial distrust gave way to a cautious friendship. A week after leaving the hospital, Michael took her to see the headquarters of Davidson Tech. The imposing building in the financial district intimidated Sarah, as did the curious looks from employees when they passed through the lobby. Does everyone know who I am? She asked, uncomfortable. They know you're important to me, replied Michael simply, and that's all they need to know. On the 10th floor, he showed her the room that would be hers, an airy space with a view of the city. You'll officially start next week. Jennifer will help you get acclimated. And Noah? We have a corporate daycare on the 2nd floor, explained Michael. He'll be well cared for while you work. Sarah walked around the room with her fingers, touching the noble wooden desk, the ergonomic chair, the state-of-the-art computer. It seemed like an impossible dream. Why are you doing all this? She finally asked, the question that wouldn't leave her mind. I know you talked about your loss, but this goes beyond compassion, doesn't it? Michael was silent for a long moment, looking out the window at the city that stretched below. When I lost Emily and Ethan, he began, his voice controlled, I also lost my purpose. I spent 10 years building a financial empire that meant nothing. I would wake up, work, sleep, an empty cycle. Then I saw you in that restaurant, feeding Noah with so much love with so little in your hands. He turned to face her, his eyes shining with contained emotion. It was like a slap in the face. You had everything that mattered, that love, that connection, even without having anything material. And I had everything money could buy, but was completely empty. Sarah felt her heart tighten. For the first time, she saw beyond the billionaire, beyond the benefactor. She saw just a broken man trying to rebuild some meaning for his existence. We're helping each other then, she said softly. Michael nodded, grateful for the understanding. It seems we are. As they left the building, under the curious gaze of employees, neither of them noticed the presence of an older man observing them from across the street. Robert Miller, Jason's father, had come personally to New York after seeing the news about his daughter-in-law and grandson. With a brusque gesture, he took his cell phone from his pocket and dialed. I found them, he said dryly, and I don't like what I'm seeing at all. If this story interested you, Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give a like. Tell us from which city you're watching us. We continue. Sarah's first month at Davidson Tech was a whirlwind of new experiences. Waking up in a spacious apartment, dropping Noah at the corporate daycare, sitting at a desk with her own name on the door, everything seemed part of a dream from which she feared waking at any moment. The curious looks from co-workers soon gave way to genuine respect. Sarah learned quickly and brought a unique perspective to the company's social projects. Where executives saw numbers and statistics, she saw faces and stories. Her suggestions for partnerships with shelters and training programs for homeless people were quickly approved by the board. "You're transforming our social responsibility department," commented Jennifer during lunch. "Michael was right about you." Sarah smiled timidly. She still felt out of place in that corporate world, with its implicit codes and unique language, but she was determined to prove her worth. "How is he?" she asked, trying to sound casual. Michael had traveled to Silicon Valley a week ago for negotiations with potential investors. "Different," replied Jennifer, observing her with curiosity. "More focused, more present. I haven't seen him like this in years." The comment left Sarah thoughtful. The relationship between her and Michael had evolved into something she couldn't clearly define. It wasn't romance, although sometimes she caught looks from him that suggested more than friendship. It wasn't just gratitude, although she was eternally grateful for everything he had done. It was a peculiar connection, born of extraordinary circumstances, nourished by shared losses and reborn hopes. Every night, even with the time difference, Michael called to check on them. He asked about her work, about Noah's progress, about the status of the legal process. Sarah found herself anxiously waiting for these calls, mentally preparing stories to tell, saving the small achievements of the day to share with him. Noah, who was now almost a year old, also seemed to miss Michael. Whenever the phone rang, his little eyes lit up in expectation. "It's almost as if we were a family," Sarah murmured to herself one night, watching Noah sleep peacefully in his crib. The thought both frightened and comforted her in equal measure. On the eve of Michael's return, Sarah received an unexpected call from Rachel Bennett. "The Millers have filed a formal request for custody," informed the lawyer without preamble. "They're claiming that you abandoned their grandson for months and only reappeared when you found a rich sponsor." Sarah felt her blood freeze. "That's not true. I never abandoned Noah. I was just—" "I know," Rachel reassured her. "But they're playing hardball. They've hired Greg Wilson, a lawyer who specializes in custody cases for high-net-worth families, and they're using the hospital photos and your sudden change in lifestyle as evidence of opportunism. What do we do?" "I'm already preparing our response. In your favor, we have current stability, employment, and most importantly, the fact that you never stopped caring for Noah, even in the worst circumstances. We'll request a psychosocial evaluation that will demonstrate your capacity as a mother." After hanging up, Sarah sat on the sofa, trembling. The possibility of losing Noah was unbearable. He was all she had left after losing Jason, her only link to the man she had loved. When the intercom rang announcing a visit, Sarah imagined it would be Jennifer, who occasionally stopped by to check if they needed anything. But upon opening the door, she found a middle-aged man with gray hair and a hard expression. "Robert," she whispered, recognizing her father-in-law, whom she hadn't seen in almost a year. Robert Miller entered without being invited, his eyes critically scanning the luxurious apartment. "I see you've done well for yourself, Sarah." She swallowed hard, feeling her heart race. "What do you want, Robert?" "How did you find me?" "All of America knows where you are," he replied with disdain. "The new protege of the technology magnate. A touching story for the newspapers, isn't it?" His voice dripped with sarcasm. Sarah stood firm, although inside she was trembling. "If you've come to create problems, I ask you to leave. Noah is sleeping." "Noah," he repeated, the name sounding strange in his mouth. "My grandson, blood of my blood, son of my son who is gone." "He was my husband too," Sarah retorted, her voice choked. "And Noah is my son." Robert took a step toward her, intimidating. "A son you're not capable of raising, living off handouts from a billionaire who clearly wants something in return." The insult hit Sarah like a slap. "You don't know what you're talking about. Michael is helping us because he's buying you," Robert interrupted coldly, "and using my grandson as a bargaining chip for his guilty conscience. You think I haven't researched him? The man lost his family and now wants to replace it with mine." Sarah felt anger growing, replacing her initial fear. "Get out of here, Robert. You have no right to invade my home and make these accusations." "Home?" He laughed bitterly. "None of this is yours, Sarah. It's all his. The apartment, the job, the clothes you wear, and when he tires of you, what will be left for you?" For Noah, his words touched a deep insecurity that Sarah was trying to ignore. As grateful as she was to Michael, as much as she trusted his intentions, the disparity between them was an undeniable fact. What would happen if one day he simply changed his mind? "I have a proposal," continued Robert, modulating his voice to a more conciliatory tone. "Come back to White Plains with us. I'll give you and Noah your own house in your name, a job at the construction company. Real stability, not this temporary fantasy." The offer caught her off guard. It was exactly what Robert had refused to offer a year ago, when he had practically expelled her from White Plains after Jason's accident. "Why now?" she asked, suspicious. "A year ago you told me I was nothing to your family, that Noah would be better off without me." Robert had the decency to look embarrassed. "We made mistakes, we were grieving. But Noah is our grandson, and you, well, you were my son's wife." "Was?" Sarah raised an eyebrow. "I still am. Death doesn't annul marriage in my heart, Robert." The man sighed, running his hand through his grey hair. For a moment, Sarah glimpsed in him the father that Jason had loved so much, not the cruel man who had rejected her. "Just consider it," he asked more softly, "for Noah's sake. He deserves to know his roots, to grow up close to his father's family." Before Sarah could respond, they heard the sound of a key in the door. Michael entered, carrying luggage and a bag of gifts. Seeing Robert, he froze momentarily. "Sorry, I didn't know you had a visitor," he said, his gaze alternating between Sarah and the older man. "Michael, this is Robert Miller," Sarah introduced tensely. "Jason's father, my father-in-law." The two men sized each other up silently. Michael extended his hand, which Robert accepted after a perceptible hesitation. "Mr. Miller," Michael greeted formally, "I imagine you're here to see your grandson." "Among other things," replied Robert, his tone hardened again, "like understanding what kind of interest a single billionaire has in my daughter-in-law and my grandson." Michael wasn't shaken by the provocation. The same interest any decent human being should have upon seeing a young mother and a child in need of help. "Help?" Robert repeated sarcastically. "Is that what you call it? It's clear to anyone that your intentions go beyond Christian charity, Mr. Davidson." Sarah intervened before the situation escalated. "Robert was just leaving," she said firmly, opening the door. "We'll talk another day when emotions are more controlled." Robert cast a final challenging look at Michael before heading to the door. "Think about my proposal, Sarah, for Noah." Then to Michael, "This isn't over, Mr. Davidson." When the door closed, silence hung between them. Michael set his bags on the floor, visibly disturbed by the encounter. "What proposal?" he finally asked. Sarah explained Robert's offer, the house, the job, the return to White Plains. "He's also filed for custody," she added, her voice trembling slightly. "Rachel called me today." Michael nodded, processing the information. It was expected. They're feeling that they're losing control of the situation. "What if they're right?" asked Sarah in a low voice. "About us, I mean. About all this not being real." Michael stared at her, surprised. "What do you mean?" "Everything happened so fast, Michael. In 2 months I went from homeless to corporate executive living in a penthouse. Sometimes I don't believe it myself. How can I expect a judge to believe it?" He approached, gently touching her arm. "It is real, Sarah. Your work is real. You're making a difference. Your love for Noah is real. He hesitated, searching for the right word. "Our friendship is real." Sarah felt the warmth of his hand, the comfort of his presence. She desperately wanted to believe him. "And if one day you get tired," the question escaped before she could contain it. "If you decide you've done enough for us." The hurt in Michael's eyes was instantaneous and deep. "Is that what you think of me? That I'm just having fun, playing benefactor until I get bored?" "No," she protested, but Robert touched on a sensitive point. "All of this is yours, Michael. The apartment, the job, the legal security. If one day this ends, where will I stand? How will I protect Noah? Michael backed away, hurt. I thought you trusted me. I do, she assured him. But I also have to be realistic. For the first time, I'm in a position to secure a future for my son. I need to consider all possibilities. Silence hung between them again, full of unspoken words and confused feelings. I bought something for Noah, Michael finally said, picking up the bag of gifts. A teddy bear from California. I thought he might like it. The sudden change of subject caught Sarah off guard, but she accepted the offered exit from the tense conversation. He'll love it. He's sleeping now, but you can give it to him tomorrow. Michael nodded, leaving the gift on the sofa. I think I'll go. I'm tired from the trip. Michael, Sarah called when he was already at the door. Thank you for coming back. He smiled sadly. I'll always come back, Sarah. That's what you still don't understand. After he left, Sarah went to Noah's room. The boy slept peacefully, oblivious to the storms forming around him. She touched her son's soft hair, so similar to Jason's, and felt tears coming. She wanted the best for Noah. She always had. But what would be best? The stability offered by his paternal grandparents, with roots and family history, or the new world that Michael had opened for them, full of possibilities but also uncertainties. The next morning, upon arriving at the office, she found an envelope on her desk. Inside, a property deed for the Brooklyn apartment transferred to her name, and a bank account with a substantial amount also in her name. A note accompanied the documents in Michael's elegant handwriting, so that you never again doubt your place in this world. This is not about me or my feelings. It's about you and Noah having the security you deserve, regardless of what happens between us. M. Sarah held the paper to her chest, tears flowing freely. In all her life, no one besides Jason had demonstrated such a level of understanding and respect for her insecurities. On the upper floor of the building, Michael observed the city through the windows of his office. Jennifer entered silently, depositing a folder on his desk. The transfer has been completed, she informed him. Are you sure about this, sir? Michael nodded without turning around. Absolutely. Sarah needs autonomy, not charity. Jennifer hesitated at the door. May I make a personal observation, sir? He turned, surprised. In 15 years, Jennifer rarely crossed the professional line. Of course. You're in love with her, she said simply. Michael neither confirmed nor denied, just turned back to look out the window. Does that matter? It matters if you're letting your feelings cloud your judgment. He smiled sadly. For the first time in 10 years, Jennifer, my judgment has never been so clear. Later that afternoon, as Sarah was picking up Noah from the corporate daycare, her cell phone rang. It was Rachel Bennett. The Millers have doubled down, informed the lawyer, her voice tense. They're requesting an emergency hearing, claiming that you're being manipulated by Michael and that it puts Noah at psychological risk. Sarah closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the world on her shoulders. When? Next week. And Sarah, they have a witness. Someone who claims to have evidence of an improper relationship between you and Michael. That's absurd, protested Sarah. There's no relationship beyond friendship. Rachel's silence was revealing. It doesn't matter what exists, Sarah. What matters is what they can make it appear to exist. And at this moment, the story of a vulnerable single mother being adopted by a lonely billionaire doesn't look good to a conservative judge. After hanging up, Sarah hugged Noah tightly, as if fearing he might disappear at any moment. The boy, sensing her anguish, touched her face with his small hands, a gesture of comfort that only made her tears increase. We'll be okay, my love, she promised, though her voice betrayed her uncertainty. Mommy will take care of you always. The courtroom at the New York County Courthouse imposed respect with its solemn silence and the national flag beside the judge's bench. Sarah nervously adjusted the navy blue blazer that Jennifer had helped her choose. Professional, but maternal, the assistant had said. Noah was with a trusted babysitter, specially hired for the day. Michael, seated in the front row of the gallery, kept his eyes fixed on her, transmitting a confidence he didn't feel. On the other side of the room, Robert and Linda Miller, accompanied by their lawyer, Greg Wilson, projected the perfect image of concerned grandparents. Linda had tears in her eyes, strategically positioned so that Judge Nancy Crawford could notice her suffering. Rachel Bennett was exceptionally serious that morning. "Remember," she whispered to Sarah, "answer only what is asked. No digressions, no excessive emotions. Facts, Sarah. Just facts." Judge Crawford, a woman in her 50s, known for her rigorous impartiality, entered the courtroom. Everyone stood in respect. "We are here to evaluate the request for temporary guardianship of the child Noah Miller, currently under the care of his mother, Sarah Miller, and requested by the paternal grandparents, Robert and Linda Miller," announced the judge, leafing through the documents. "Given the sensitive nature of the case and the age of the child, I will conduct this hearing in a more direct manner. Attorney Wilson, you may begin." Greg Wilson rose with the confidence of someone who had won similar battles. Tall, impeccably dressed, he carried a black folder that seemed to contain Sarah's fate. "Your Honor, the facts are simple," he began, his voice modulated to convey sincere concern. "After the tragic accident that claimed Jason Miller's life a year ago, his wife Sarah disappeared with the couple's son, Noah, then only 4 months old. 4 months! My clients desperately searched for their grandson without success." Sarah felt her blood boil at the distortion of facts, but Rachel squeezed her arm, reminding her to maintain her composure. "Suddenly," continued Wilson, "Sarah reappears in national headlines, not as a dedicated mother, but as the new protégé of billionaire Michael Davidson. In a matter of days, she begins living in a luxury apartment and occupies an executive position in his company, a position for which I must emphasize she has no formal qualifications." Wilson made a dramatic pause, looking directly at Sarah. "The question we present, Your Honor, is not whether Sarah loves her son. It's whether this environment, this questionable relationship with a man she barely knows, offers the necessary stability for Noah's healthy development." The insinuation was clear, and Sarah felt her face burn. Michael, in the gallery, maintained an impassive countenance, although his eyes betrayed his contained fury. "Furthermore," Wilson continued, removing some photos from the folder, "we have evidence that Sarah exposed Noah to deplorable living conditions before finding her. Benefactor, sleeping in an old car without basic hygiene conditions, without adequate medical assistance. It was only a happy coincidence that Mr. Davidson found her. But what if that hadn't happened? How much longer would Noah have survived under those conditions?" Sarah felt tears threatening to fall, but she breathed deeply, remembering Rachel's advice. She couldn't show weakness now. "On the other hand," continued Wilson, "my clients offer proven stability, a structured home, financial resources, family ties. They are Noah's paternal grandparents, his blood, his history. They only ask for the opportunity to provide their grandson with the life their son would have wished for him." When Wilson finished, Rachel stood up, her calm demeanor contrasting with her colleague's inflamed presentation. "Your Honor, before presenting our defense, I would like to clarify some facts distorted by the opposing party," she began, adjusting her glasses. "Sarah Miller never disappeared with Noah. After losing her husband, she was practically expelled from the house where she lived in White Plains by the Miller family itself, who refused to offer any assistance to their daughter-in-law and grandson." Robert Miller shifted uncomfortably in his chair, avoiding the judge's gaze. Without resources and without family support, Sarah did what any mother would do. She fought for her son's survival with the tools she had, and yes, for a period, that included living in precarious conditions. But at no time did Noah fail to receive what's most important: love, care, and full dedication. Rachel walked slowly to the bench, depositing some documents. "We present records from community health centers, where Sarah regularly took Noah for checkups, even in her most vulnerable situation. Testimonies from social workers who encountered her during this period attest to her unwavering commitment to her son's well-being." Turning to the judge, Rachel continued, "As for the relationship with Mr. Davidson, we present facts, not insinuations. Michael Davidson lost his wife and son in an accident similar to the one that claimed our client's husband. Upon finding Sarah and Noah in a vulnerable situation, he offered humanitarian help, later formalized through legitimate opportunities for work and housing. The lawyer then presented the documents transferring the apartment and bank account to Sarah's name. As you can verify, Your Honor, these transfers were made without any conditions or restrictive clauses. They were pure donations, legally registered, demonstrating the genuine intention to provide autonomy to our client, not dependency." The judge analyzed the documents carefully, her neutral countenance not revealing her impressions. "Finally," concluded Rachel, "we request that you consider not only the material aspect, but also the unbreakable emotional bond between mother and son. Noah is in a safe environment, with access to quality education, health, and above all the love of a mother who never, even in the most difficult moments, ceased to prioritize his well-being." After the initial presentations, the testimonies began. Linda Miller cried while talking about her lost son and the grandson she barely knew. Robert described the constant concern for Noah's well-being. The social worker hired by the Millers highlighted the importance of extended family ties in child development. Then it was Sarah's turn. With trembling legs, she went to the center of the room, took the oath, and sat facing the judge. "Mrs. Miller," Judge Crawford began, "why did you leave White Plains after your husband's accident?" Sarah took a deep breath. "I had no choice, Your Honor. Robert and Linda made it clear they didn't want me around. They offered money for me to hand over Noah and disappear." A murmur ran through the room. Robert Miller protested quietly but was silenced by his lawyer. "Can this be proven?" asked the judge. "I have a recording," replied Sarah, "made on the day they threw me out of the house. Jason always advised me to record important conversations. He knew his parents well." Rachel presented the recording, which the judge listened to with headphones. Her expression hardened as she returned the device. "Why didn't you seek social assistance? There are programs for single mothers in vulnerable situations," continued the judge. "I tried, Your Honor, but the waiting lists were long, the bureaucracy complex. Meanwhile, Noah needed to eat every day. I did what I could with what I had." "And how did you meet Mr. Davidson?" Sarah recounted the encounter at the restaurant, the anonymous help that followed, Noah's medical emergency, all with a simplicity and honesty that contrasted with the Millers' calculated presentations. "What is your current relationship with Mr. Davidson?" The question everyone was expecting finally came. Sarah briefly looked at Michael before answering. "He is a friend, Your Honor, a friend who appeared when we needed him most and helped us without asking for anything in return. A man who understands the pain of loss and knew how to transform it into compassion." The judge studied her for a few moments, as if evaluating the sincerity of her words. "And if Noah's grandparents receive custody, how would you feel?" The question caught Sarah off guard. She looked at Robert and Linda, feeling a complex mixture of emotions. "I would feel incomplete," she replied with a choked voice. "Noah is my heart outside my chest, Your Honor. He's all I have left of the man I loved. But," she hesitated, "if I could be absolutely certain it would be best for him, I would accept it." A mother always puts her child above herself. The answer hung in the air, powerful in its honesty. Even Greg Wilson seemed momentarily disconcerted. After Sarah, it was Michael's turn to testify. Impeccable in his dark suit, he spoke with the eloquence of someone accustomed to commanding boardrooms. But there was a vulnerability in his eyes that no one could fake. "Mr. Davidson, why did you choose to help Sarah and Noah specifically?" asked the judge, getting straight to the point. Michael didn't hesitate. "Because in them I saw a chance for redemption, Your Honor. 10 years ago, I lost my wife Emily and my son Ethan in a car accident. Since then, I've lived on autopilot, accumulating money and power that meant nothing. Seeing Sarah fighting alone for her son reminded me of what really matters in life. And what is your long-term intention with them?" "My intention is to ensure they never again have to go through hardships. That Noah has all the opportunities my son would have had. That Sarah can realize her potential, which is immense. But more important than my intentions is the fact that I've already arranged for them to be financially secure, regardless of what happens to me or how our friendship evolves." The judge asked a few more technical questions, which Michael answered with clarity and honesty. When he returned to his seat, Sarah noticed that Linda Miller was observing him with a different expression, less hostile, more contemplative. After the final testimonies and the lawyer's considerations, the judge announced she would retire to deliberate, returning in an hour with her decision. Those 60 minutes were the longest in Sarah's life. She remained seated in the court's anteroom, unable to speak or eat. Michael sat silently beside her, not touching her but present, as he had always been in recent months. Whatever the decision, he finally said, breaking the silence. "It's not the end. We'll continue fighting." Sarah nodded, grateful for the certainty that she was no longer alone in this battle. To her surprise, Robert Miller approached them, without his wife or lawyer. He seemed to have aged 10 years since the beginning of the hearing. "May I speak with you a moment, Sarah?" he asked, his tone softer than usual. "Alone?" Michael looked at Sarah, who nodded, indicating she would be fine. He moved away, keeping himself at a visible distance, but out of earshot. "I heard the recording," Robert began, his voice trembling. "I had forgotten how cruel I was that day." Sarah didn't respond, waiting for him to continue. "When Jason was gone, a part of me died with him," confessed the older man. "I blamed everyone, including you, especially you who survived while he was gone. It wasn't fair." "No, it wasn't," agreed Sarah, without rancor, just stating a fact. "Seeing you today, hearing your testimony," Robert hesitated, "I realized that Jason chose well. You are the mother he wanted for his son." Unexpected tears appeared in Sarah's eyes. It was the closest to approval she had ever received from her father-in-law. "What are you saying, Robert?" "I'm saying that—" He took a deep breath, as if the words cost a physical effort. "I'm withdrawing the custody request." Sarah blinked, incredulous. "Why?" "Because it's the right thing to do," he answered simply. "But I have one condition." She tensed, waiting. "Let us be part of Noah's life," he asked, his voice choked. "We are the only connection he has to his father. Let us be his grandparents, Sarah. We don't want to replace you. We just want to belong to his life." The sincerity in his words moved her. Behind the hard, controlling facade was just an old man trying to hold on to the last link with his lost son. "Noah deserves to know his father's family," Sarah agreed softly. "He always did," Robert nodded, visibly relieved. "I'll talk to Linda and our lawyer now. When the judge returns, we'll make the formal announcement." When he walked away, Michael returned to Sarah's side, confused by the change in her expression. "What happened?" "A miracle, I think," she replied, still processing the conversation. "They're going to withdraw the custody request." The news caught Michael by surprise. "What? Why?" "Because they finally saw me," explained Sarah. "Not as an intruder or a threat, but as the mother of their grandson, the woman their son loved." The relief on Michael's face was instantaneous and profound. Without thinking, he enveloped her in a strong embrace, the first real physical contact between them. Sarah returned it, feeling the comforting solidity of his arms, the warmth of his body, the discreet scent of his cologne. When they separated, there was something new in both their eyes, a silent recognition of feelings that, until then, had been carefully ignored. Back in the courtroom, the formal withdrawal of the request was announced by Greg Wilson, to the evident surprise of Judge Crawford. Robert briefly explained that the family had reached an amicable understanding that prioritized Noah's well-being, including regular visits from the grandparents. The judge formalized the agreement, determining that Noah's custody would remain entirely with Sarah, with visitation rights for the paternal grandparents on alternate weekends. "Hope," commented the judge before closing the session. "That's what I see here today, a family that, even formed by losses and pain, chose hope instead of conflict." Noah is a lucky boy. Outside the courthouse, away from curious eyes, Michael, Sarah, and the Millers briefly discussed the next steps. It was agreed that the following weekend, Noah would visit his grandparents in White Plains, accompanied by Sarah. "You're welcome too, Mr. Davidson," said Linda timidly, surprising everyone. "For Sunday lunch, I mean, if you'd like to see our home." Michael looked at Sarah, who nodded discreetly. "It would be my pleasure, Mrs. Miller." In the car, on the way to pick up Noah from the babysitter's house, Sarah finally relaxed, letting tears of relief flow freely. "It's over," she whispered. "It's really over." Michael drove in silence, respecting her moment of catharsis. When they stopped at a traffic light, she touched his hand on the wheel. "Thank you," she said simply, "for everything." He intertwined his fingers with hers, an intimate and natural gesture. "We're the ones who should thank you, Sarah. You and Noah. You gave me back something I thought I had lost forever." "What?" "The ability to feel," he replied, looking into her eyes. "To care, to love." The word hung between them, loaded with possibilities. When they arrived at the babysitter's house, Noah greeted them with the effusive joy of someone who still doesn't understand the weight of events around him. Seeing Michael, he opened his arms, demanding to be held, a gesture that had become routine in recent weeks. Michael lifted him, spinning him in the air, drawing crystalline laughter from the boy. Sarah observed the scene with her heart overflowing with an emotion too complex to be named. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. It was something better, a real new beginning, built on true losses and pains, on recognized mistakes and granted forgiveness. An improvised family, formed not by blood or papers but by daily choices and voluntary love. That night, while Noah slept in his room and Michael prepared a simple dinner in the kitchen, Sarah walked through the apartment, her apartment now, reflecting on the extraordinary journey that had brought them here. From the back seat of an old car to a luxury penthouse, from distrust to mutual respect, from despair to hope, from loneliness to this new family configuration that didn't yet have a name, but had substance. "What are you thinking about?" asked Michael, finding her standing by the window observing the city lights. "About how unpredictable life is," she replied, smiling. 3 months ago I was begging for leftovers in a restaurant. Today I have a job, a home, a renewed relationship with my in-laws and—" She hesitated, looking at him. "You." Michael approached, touching her face with delicacy, as if fearing she might dissolve under his fingers. "I'm afraid," he confessed in a low voice, "of not being worthy of what you and Noah deserve, of confusing gratitude with—" "It's not gratitude," Sarah interrupted gently. "At least it's not just that. It's more. It's recognition." "Of what?" "Of souls that know the same pain, that survived the same kind of loss, that understand, without needing to explain, the value of each second of happiness." Michael closed his eyes, absorbing her words. When he reopened them, there was a calm certainty in them. "I don't know what the future holds for us," he said. "I only know that I want to be by your side to find out." "One day at a time," she suggested, smiling. "One day at a time," he agreed, leaning in to seal that promise with a gentle kiss, the first of many to come. From the room next door, as if blessing that moment, they heard Noah's laughter during sleep, the purest and most hopeful sound in the world. The sound of someone who, despite being so young, already knew what many adults never learn, that families are not made only of blood and name, but of constant presence and love. In the city that never slept, 3 broken hearts had found, in each other, the necessary pieces to rebuild themselves. Not perfect as before, the scars would always be there, visible from certain angles, sensitive at certain moments, but whole enough to move forward, together,